everybody, and welcome to another episode of Insufficient Friends. I'm Kevin, she's Nikki.
Hi.
And if you're new here, this is a podcast where we talk about whatever we want to. So, if you don't like that, then go away. But if you do, then it's kind of just like a couple friends shooting the shit. So, Nick, what we do a lot of history around here. So
Yes.
we usually start, well, anymore, because we were told that, or we kind of got that we were too boring to talk about what we actually do for anything unless we have something interesting.
Well, we weren't told it. We just knew that
we
we're
knew
boring
that we're
people.
boring.
So starting off by asking how your week goes when we don't really do anything.
Yeah. If we do something interesting, we'll talk about that. But but we decided to start doing like this day in history instead. So that's more fun. So Nick, what's going on? What happened today? What happened today in history?
So two interesting ones.
Okay.
The one that was interesting to me first was Shirley Chisholm was born on this day in 1924, and she's just one of my favorite like justice advocates. She was the first Black woman elected to Congress.
Okay.
But the one I thought you would think was funny was on this day in 1954, while napping on her couch, Ann Hodges of Alabama is hit by an 8.5 pound, 4.5 billion year old meteorite that tore through her roof, ricocheted off her radio cabinet, and hit her torso. She's the only known human injured by a meteorite.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hopefully she didn't die. I don't want anybody.
Yes, just injured. It just bounced off the cabinet and hit her in the torso.
Okay.
So it said she was just injured.
Oh,
that was 1954. Yeah.
Yeah, that's comical. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
That I mean, the odds of that happening are very small. So that's comical. But yeah, that would be crazy. 4.5. You said 4.5 pounds?
Yeah.
That's
8.
8 pounds.
I already closed out of it. It was like 8 pounds, 4.5 billion years old.
That's crazy. Yeah, 8 pounds. That means that thing had to be huge when it came into the.
I mean, basically a bowling ball.
Yeah, but you gotta but 8 pounds. Okay, so think about it. It's 8 pounds when it landed in her house.
Yeah.
Which means everything but that 8 pounds burned up in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because most of them will burn up entirely before they get to the ground. So I don't know exactly how like when something enters the atmosphere, I don't know how, like, I'm not a scientist.
I just don't know how space or anything works, to be honest.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not a scientist. Obviously, I'm sitting in an apartment in the middle of Missouri. Not, I don't, this isn't what I do that's not what I do for a living. So you'd have to ask an actual scientist.
I look like a historian in this.
Yeah. That's not real for anybody wondering. But, this is real. I can do all this, and you notice that it does, like, if Nick does this, you'll see it do some weird things, but this is real. But anyway, so like, I don't know what the mass loss,
atmospheric pressure, and
I don't know what the mass loss is for like a meteorite that falls through the atmosphere, but I would guess that it's pretty large, because like, there's a lot of, like, most things will burn up on entry into our atmosphere. So I would like that. I'd be interested to know how big that would have had to be when it entered the atmosphere. Like, would that have been the size of like a fridge, or would it have been the size of like a school bus? Like, I wonder how big that rock was when it actually like hit the Earth's atmosphere, to get down to the size of a bowling ball when it
probably the size of like Dwayne Johnson or something.
You think so? Just like a large dude, like.
Oh, that was a joke, just because it's called The Rock.
Yeah.
I'm just really tired, Kev. I'm really tired, and I'm just like eating my Cheez-Its because I don't understand science.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway, Nick, this week we are talking about a little bit about the Civil War. We kind of did the Civil War
Yeah.
more than anything, but we're really talking about Jesse James. Is that right?
hmm
Yeah. Why did I think
hmm
that was wrong? That sounded wrong in my head, but we're talking about Jesse
Nope,
James.
that's right. Yeah.
Um, because during our little trip that we had a couple weeks ago, last week we talked about the
hmm
Titanic, which we saw on that trip. This week we talked about, or we while we were on that trip, we went and visited
Yeah.
Jesse James' birthplace, his home,
hmm
which is just outside of Kansas City, actually, the home where he was
hmm
born, um, and where he died as well. Right? He
No, he died in St. Joe. Because there's a couple different Jesse James museums. There's one in St. Joe, I believe, where he died. There's one in somewhere else where he had a farm. This was his family farm and birthplace. So the official name is the Jesse James Birthplace Museum.
okay. So this is where he was
Yeah.
born. He kind of grew up there, and
Yeah.
yeah, he was buried there. He
Yes,
is
for a short
still he
time
is still buried in the town
in the
near
town of
there.
Kearney. Yeah.
Yes.
hmm
So we went and visited that.
Yes.
But anyway, so I have a little bit of history about the Civil War. We talked about the Civil War in general. I have a little history about the Civil
Yes.
War in Missouri because that's what he was kind of involved in.
Yeah.
So, the Civil War, um, obviously, north south over
hmm
a lot of different things, but a big part of it was slavery.
hmm
The Missouri was a slave state from when it
hmm
was founded in 1821. Um,
hmm
Now, you had a big. Missouri, though, is a very hotly contested state. During the Civil War, you had
Yeah.
people fighting on both sides. A
Because it
lot of.
was a border state.
Yeah.
Like officially, we were a slave state, but there were Union and Confederates here for
Yes.
sure.
You had a lot of people fighting on both sides.
Yes.
And you had the governor, the elected governor of the state,
hmm
try
hmm
to in 18 so in 1860 Claiborne Fox Jackson was elected governor,
hmm
and he tried to send the state militia to St. Louis to take over the federal arsenal for the
hmm
Confederacy, but was beat back by a Union army led by Nathaniel Lyon. After
Yeah.
that, he met with Lyon. Him met along with Sterling Price, who was the leader of the state, basically
Oh,
the National Guard at the time. So
okay.
they had been they had the state assembly had voted to create the National Guard after this had happened, or
Hmm.
after he had been uh,
Interesting.
created. So, or after he had been sworn in. So they all met in June. I don't. What year was that? It doesn't exactly say what year that is. Anyways, they all met in St. Louis, uh, in a hotel in St. Louis. Um, they There was another skirmish shortly after that between the two sides. Lyon basically fought him back and ended up marching to Jefferson City and taking over the city basically because
Wow.
they were like the
It's a
union was
long
like,
march.
"Hey, we're done with this. Like
hmm
we're not gonna this isn't gonna fly." And the government, the Confederate people ran south to the
hmm
state and created their own kind of small government,
Interesting.
and they voted to secede
Hmm.
with their little government, even though they didn't have any power anymore in the actual
hmm
state. The actual state the actual Congress, or the actual, I guess, legislature in the state, voted
Yeah.
that the governorship was vacant,
Mm-hmm.
um, and
Interesting.
basically gave that power to who did they give that power to?
All I keep thinking is that is a
State for Congress
long
reconvened.
march.
Yeah, it would have been. Governor's office vacant on July. They appointed former Missouri. Okay, so on July 28th, they appointed former Missouri Supreme Court Chief Justice Hamilton Gamble to governor the
Hmm.
state and agreed to comply with Lincoln's demand for troops. So they
Oh,
appointed
interesting. Okay.
they appointed the Supreme Court Chief Justice to basically comply with the Union and
Hmm.
follow Lincoln's orders. Um,
Hmm.
you had the first and largest, the first battle this side of the Mississippi at Wilson's Creek, which is actually just up the street from where I grew up,
Oh.
and just outside of Springfield in 1861. Um, it was the first time the
Hmm.
Missouri State Guard fought alongside Confederate forces. Um, the
Hmm.
Union, about 1,300 Union soldiers died, including Lyon, and
Oh, wow.
about 1,200 Confederates were killed. So you had
Oh,
almost
it's pretty even.
yeah. So yeah, and
Hmm.
by the end of the war in 1865, nearly 110,000 Missourians had served in the Union Army, and at least 40,000 had served for the Confederates.
Hmm.
And then you also had many Confederates keep serving as bushwhackers afterwards, which
Yeah.
was where Jesse James kind of comes in, because he wasn't allowed to
Hmm.
actually serve in the war because he wasn't old
Yes, he
enough.
was young.
Yeah.
He was young. Um, so Jesse James was born in 1847 in Clay County. So, what is that? 12, 13 years before the war officially started, but he was born when all this hostility was
Mm-hmm.
ongoing.
Kind of boiling up.
His
Yeah.
his older brother Frank actually marched off to fight for the rebellion, the Confederacy, but he was still too young. So he was born to Zerelda and Robert James, hemp farmers who owned slaves. So they had six slaves and had a hemp farm. And that's what's in Kearney, Missouri that we went to. So his older brothers went off to war, and his older brother, Frank, because he was working with these pro Confederate guerrillas, Union militiamen actually came to the James house, roughed up both the stepfather and Jesse. They were both tortured for information. So
Which
this
is not
is
okay.
kind of,
Which is not okay.
yeah, to clarify, not okay.
Not okay.
But that was the spark that set off Jesse James to be staunchly pro-Confederate and want to fight for the cause. So in the spring of 1864, he was 16 years old and he joined a guerrilla group led by Bloody Bill Anderson. And they terrorized pro Union people in the Missouri countryside. And he was very much still an impressionable teenager. And when he, was with Bloody Bill, they did the Centralia massacre. So 22 unarmed Union shoulder soldiers and 22 unarmed and then 100 other armed Union soldiers were butchered. And so that, if you experience that as a 16-year-old, I mean, that's crazy. I can't imagine growing up in like a war time like that.
Yeah.
And then, so that kind of led him to a life of warfare, robbery. So, even though a lot of the guerrillas like returned to civilian life. A lot of them didn't feel at peace. Obviously, they didn't like quote unquote win. Like Missouri was still very hostile at that time. And so Jesse and Frank, because of everything that had happened to their family, and everything like that, and the humiliation of this Confederate defeat, they were very disenfranchised. And so they felt like the victims, of this. And so they chose to like continue fighting and robbing and terrorizing the Missouri countryside. And so he targeted a bank in Gallatin, Missouri. This was, I think, his first robbery. But he chose this bank specifically because this was the guy who ran it was supposedly the guy who had killed Bloody Bill Anderson. So, December 7th, 1869, Jesse and Frank, his older brother, they rode in during daylight, shot an unarmed cashier, made off with some money, but very little because I think some of it was worthless after the war and everything. And they did make an escape, even though there was like a posse sent after them to capture them. And they apparently like declared to the newspapers like they would never be taken alive. And from like the first time the newspapers talked about them, they loved the attention.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so I think the media machine in Missouri at that time, being local newspapers, even though it's not like the social media we have today, it was still so influential. And so they actually kind of tailored their robberies to like get press. So they weren't trying to like do a robbery and get away with it. They were trying to get attention. So they did like a lot of daytime things versus like logically it might make more sense to like do things at night. But there was a ex-Confederate soldier that was a newspaper editor. I don't know if this was the Kansas City Star or what newspaper it was for, but John Newman Edwards was the editor of this local newspaper that constructed the idea of Jesse James as like a hero because
Mm-hmm.
Jesse James, very much not a hero. He was a murderer and a con artist and an ex-Confederate soldier. But the he had a lot of people in the newspapers that were ex-Confederates working to make them be portrayed as like Robin Hood,
Mm-hmm.
or just like a hero fighting for the legacy of the South type of thing. So Jesse James actually he proclaimed innocence for like some specific crimes, but definitely they committed a lot of robberies that were proven they we know it was them. But he compared himself. He told John Newman Edwards, this editor, in a letter once, he said, "We are not thieves. We are bold robbers. I am proud of the name, for Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon Bonaparte were all bold robbers." So he stole from the rich, but he didn't give any to the poor. I don't know if they thought like because they grew up poor, that was the equivalent of Robin Hood, but um, definitely didn't give it to the poor. They just stole. But they were definitely worked up to be like this, the man, the myth, the legend type of
Yeah.
thing in the years. So they did a lot of bank robberies, some train robberies throughout their lifetime. Um, and because there were so many people after them, the Pinkertons were after them. I mean, Union sympathizers were after them. Like there were so many people after them. They moved around a ton from farm. That's why there's so many places in Missouri that claim to be like Jesse James home, because they moved around a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, though, he did get married. Zerelda Mims, which I didn't know this. Maybe this was in the video that we saw at the museum, maybe not. Zerelda was his first cousin. So Zerelda must have been a family name because that was also his mom's name.
Okay. That explains why
So
it was the same name than a little bit
it's a
more if it was
religious
his
Hebrew name.
first cousin. Okay.
So that would make total sense for that time in Missouri, like having a family name. Yeah, because I was confused too because they kept saying Zerelda, like constantly in
Yeah,
that movie. So
like
both his mom and wife had the same
I
name.
thought it was just mom. I thought every time they said it was just mom. I'm like, okay, mom, mom, okay, mom.
Hmm.
Yep, okay. And
Yeah.
then
So
when we
no,
went
he
to the
was
grave, I'm like, wait,
married.
what? Hold on. Why is there two of them
Yes.
here? Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So he was married and had a son, but never really was able to settle down because when he wasn't like robbing places with Frank, he would try to do like different money making schemes, like racehorses. Um, but it those things that were like on the side, he needed the attention and he needed the spotlight. So a lot of those like money making schemes, quote unquote, didn't last long because he wanted attention and the legends and everything like that.
Which
But
is crazy.
so he returned to crime from those like money making schemes in 1879. But by then, ex Confederates had taken over Missouri's political reign, so the public had very little patience for him being like this. I'm still fighting for the Confederacy. They're like, no, the Confederacy's in power again in Missouri, so you're just robbing people. So his new gang, they were in it for the money and not the cause anymore. And so he was actually killed by one of his new gang members because the governor had put a $10,000 reward out, dead or alive. And so when he was very rarely ever caught with his guard down. So at his home in St. Joe, he put his gun down, was adjusting a picture frame on the wall, is the story they told us. And then one of his allies shot him in the back of the head. So he died. The allies were pardoned by the governor, collected the reward. So that's how he went down, is because there was no longer a fake cause to fight for.
Yep.
So, yeah. And I just feel like he was always this like legend
Yeah.
when in reality he was just
He's just a bank robber.
a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's always been interesting just because that's right around from where I'm from. So I grew up hearing all about him and everything. And that movie, when we went to the museum and we're in that little room watching that movie, they definitely play him up to be like, they recognize the fact that his family owned slaves and they were on the Confederate side. Like they recognize that, but they definitely make him seem like more of like a legend,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep. They
than
did.
what was like actually,
Yeah.
happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that room also was lined with like posters of movie posters of things that he has
Yeah.
like been portrayed in and things too, which makes sense. It's a museum about him, so I get it a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
they're trying
Yeah. So
to fund like a museum, so I get it. But
yeah,
yeah.
and we got to visit. So we visited the that museum, his birthplace and family farm. And he was buried after he was killed. He was buried on the family farm for a
Mm-hmm.
while. And then once his wife died years later, she was buried in the city cemetery, so he was moved to be buried next to her. So currently, they are both buried together. We got to see that too. We went out and looked at the gravesite of both of them. They are buried together now.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a conspiracy that he never really died, like he faked his death so his friends could claim and him could split the reward. And there's a city in Texas that a guy named Jesse James died, or someone who was going by an alias but said he was Jesse James on his like deathbed or something. And so there's like a city in Texas, I don't remember the name of it, but they claim to be the real death place of Jesse James. So much so that it gained traction. And a couple of years ago, they did DNA testing on the remains from the gravesite here in Kearney, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And they did prove that Jesse James is indeed buried there with his wife.
Oh,
So
yeah. Interesting.
the city in Texas is wrong. Like it's just a conspiracy theory. So he
Interesting.
did actually die, is
In
buried here
Yeah.
according to DNA.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. And that's Jesse James.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a neat little museum. I mean, it's obviously very biased, uh, or I don't know the right word for it, but it's like $7 or $8, I think, to get in. So it's worth a little drive up just to see some interesting
Yeah.
like Civil War
It's
history.
like 20 minutes outside
Missouri.
of Kansas City. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
if you're
worth
out
it's
that way.
worth driving up there. It's
Yeah.
in Kearney. So.
So, I think that means it's time for facts.
Mhm.
Nick, you want to go first this time?
You can go first.
Okay. So I mentioned I grew up at outside of Springfield or around Springfield area,
Hmm.
several different places that we moved around. But I went to Wilson's Creek several times as a kid because it's just kind of a cool little place to go.
Oh
It
yeah.
was the first major Civil War battle west of the Mississippi. August 10th of 1861. There was, I think, several battles there, but it was the site of the first major one. Um, Missouri is also the site of the largest Civil War battle west of the Mississippi, and that was in your neck of the woods, the Battle of Westport in Kansas City, which happened in
Oh yeah.
1864.
Hmm.
Missouri was also the third most fought over state behind, I think, Virginia or West Virginia and what was the other one? Kentucky, maybe? I don't remember. I don't have it written down on
Hmm.
here, but it was the third most fought over state, which we kind of went over with like the,
Interesting.
you know, whole governor being,
Yeah.
secession and all that kind of stuff and
Hmm.
everything else. So, yeah, it was the whole war was kind of a very very contentious thing here in the show me
Yeah.
state. So,
Yeah.
whereas
It sometimes still is,
a lot
depending
of
on
yeah,
how south you go and who
yeah,
you talk
a lot of other
to.
things is a lot of other states were either yes or either Union or
Mhm.
Confederate. There was probably some not as
Yeah.
much. Some
Missouri has
people, but
always been a border state in many ways, like not just the Civil War, but
oh yeah.
like I feel like Missouri's just always been like that.
Oh well,
We've never
it was
been
only a couple governors
one
ago that
way.
we had a Democratic governor and a Republican
Hmm.
Congress, so or a Republican legislature. So
Yeah.
Missouri has in the past been a relatively purple state
Yeah.
politically. Like
Hmm.
it can go back and forth sometimes. And we've had
Hmm.
both Democrat and Republican lawmakers, so
Yeah.
yeah, it can
Like
swing both ways
politics,
sometimes.
sports. Well, maybe more so in the past, not now. Like it used to be, we even used to be divided sports. Like it was Chiefs versus Rams, Royals versus Cardinals. Now it's Royals versus Cardinals, but there's just the Chiefs.
Yeah,
But like there's just so many things that I think of that Missouri is like, we're always 50-50 on.
pretty much. Yeah, kind of.
We're so indecisive. We're like Pisces, we're indecisive and emotional.
Oh, what's your fact, Nick?
Okay, so mine was just talking a little bit more about the Pinkertons. I mentioned them in passing, but we didn't
Mm-hmm.
really talk about it. So the Pinkerton Detective Agency actually got a tip that Jesse James was back at the family farm after he had been like in hiding and moving around for a while. So they came and threw a bomb, yeah, a bomb at that time, in the window and into like the fireplace area of the house. That bomb killed Jesse James' younger brother, who was like 8 or 9 at the time, and maimed his mom. So his mom lost her arm. And it turned out that that tip wasn't even like Jesse James was not even there. So the Pinkerton Detective Agency, I mean, they're kind of shady anyway, but definitely, I mean, bombing a house with this tip. I don't know, and they ended up killing a kid and maiming the mom, and it was the whole thing. But
We may have to do an episode on the Pinkertons sometimes because
yeah,
that's kind of
they're
a
definitely
sketchy group.
interesting.
Yeah, that used to
Yeah,
be
and
kind of a
they were working with like local law enforcement, but it wasn't like really local law enforcement. It was like other like pro union guerrilla warfare.
yeah.
I don't know. It was a little confusing, but yeah, definitely some yeah sketchy stuff. Very politically motivated. The Pinkerton, so Alan Pinkerton himself was an abolitionist and actually helped slaves escape by the Underground Railroad and everything.
Hmm.
So there was more than just, good versus bad like outlaw, you know, the law versus outlaw, but it was also like politically motivated and other things.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I think that is it for this week.
Yep.
Hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. If you have any thoughts or ideas, something that you think would be interesting, let us know. We'll probably think it's interesting, or we'll talk about it. You know, we talk about just about anything because we just like, you know, shooting the shit. So, yeah, we just like talking. So, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, ring the little bell thingy, whatever, get notifications. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.